Hey, 8th grade math students, Mr. Ballard here. Hope you guys are doing great. Hopefully it's nice to see me for the first time in 2 weeks. Just want you guys to know, first off, really miss you a lot. Hope you're doing okay at home. Hopefully you're not too bored and somehow keeping in contact with your friends and all that fun stuff. As far as my family and I go, we're doing great. We hope you are as well. And I hope we can be back together sometime really soon. But jumping into math, what we are going to do today is we're going to continue with two-way tables and categorical data. So that being said, let's just jump into this. So this is Module 6, Lesson 14, last lesson of the module. We'll talk about quizzes and all that stuff later as we go. There will not be one this week. It'll probably be next week for this. And what we're looking at specifically today is just looking how to calculate frequencies for row calculations and column calculations. And so you pulled up your Jamboard or your PDF of the lesson, and we are going to start at the very beginning here. And so by the end of this lesson, you should be able to calculate both row and column frequency, just not frequency for the overall table, which we did in the prior two lessons, and then just really analyze that data. So the first example we'll use here is movie preferences for teachers and students. So we've got results of all these teachers and students that were polled and asked which type of movie they would prefer. And for A through D, we are asked to calculate the proportion for teachers. So when we're doing this, they're really saying just look at the teacher row and calculate the frequencies for the row. We're not comparing the teachers to the students. We're not comparing teachers to the overall amount of people polled in this. We are specifically just looking at how many teachers prefer action movies, drama, science, comedy. So when I go to calculate that, part A, let me just read it how it's exactly worded. What proportion of participants who are teachers prefer action movies? So they're saying just look at teachers. So what I would do is I would do 40 divided by, and I'm getting 40 here because it's teachers who prefer action, divided by the total number of teachers. And hopefully you're seeing as you look at the table, there it is, 100 teachers. So when I do that division problem, I get the proportion of, and what I prefer to call the frequency of 0.40. So what I'll ask you to do is hit pause, calculate the frequency for the next three. All right. So the next one you should have done for drama, 20 divided by 100 and got 0.20. For science fiction, 10 divided by 100, which is 0.10. And finally for comedy, 30 divided by 100, which would get you 0.30. Now, the cool thing is, if you were to add up each one of our frequencies, 40 hundredths, 20 hundredths, 10 hundredths, 30 hundredths, that would add up to one whole, which is one whole group of teachers or 100% of the teachers. That is how we calculate row frequency. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take these answers and fill it in on the next table on the next page. So here we have 0.4. There we've got 0.2, 0.10, and finally 0.3. And then what you're asked to do for question 3 is go ahead and do the frequencies for students. So I'm going to ask you to go to the previous screen, maybe take a screenshot, write it down as a table, find the frequencies for the students. Go ahead and hit pause the video, come back when you're done. All right, now that you've got your table filled out, I'm going to go ahead and fill those in so you can verify your answers. So these are the results you should have gotten. And there we go. Looking at that, question 4 asks us, is the participant status, meaning if they're labeled as a teacher or a student, related to what type of movie that they would prefer to watch? Why or why not? Take a second to think about that. Pause if you need to. And right now, what you should get from this is that no, whether they're a student or a teacher, I can't tell the difference because all of their numbers are exactly the same if I'm looking at an individual movie. So meaning if I were to say, hey, 40% of this group prefers action, you couldn't tell me if that's a teacher or if that's a student. Or if I were to say, this has a frequency of 0.30, they do, for comedy. Which group am I talking about? Well, you couldn't tell me if that's students or teachers. So when the numbers are exactly the same, it's what we go down to for number 5. We say that there is no association. Okay? So meaning if my numbers are exactly the same, I can't use those differences to find an association with who likes what more or who likes what less. So, for number 6, it says notice that the relative row frequencies for each movie type on the previous page for teachers and students were the same. When this happens, we say that there is no association. Another way of thinking about this is saying that if a participant is a teacher or a student, it provides no information about which movie they prefer. So the next question says right underneath, what does it mean if row relative frequency are not the same for all rows of a two-way table? So what if I calculated the frequencies and they were different? Well, then we would say that there are associations that could be made. I could tell the difference of who prefers what movie because there's differences. And the differences are what creates associations. All right, so on number 7 here, we're using the same scenario, we're just using it a little differently. Last time we did row frequency, which was calculating it from left to right. Now we are going to use what's called column frequency, and the columns go up and down. So when we look at column frequency, we're just looking at the percentage or the preference of action movies between two groups: drama, science fiction, comedy. So they gave us one example here. It says a column relative frequency is a cell frequently divided by the corresponding column for its total. For example, the column relative frequency for student slash action cell is 120 divided by 160 gets 0.75. So this is what this means. They looked at students, they looked at action, and they did, you'll need this table again, they did 120 students that like action divided by the total people that like action. So that's how they did that first calculation. And when they did it, they got 0.75. You're going to use that first table to do the rest of your calculations. Go ahead, hit pause now, use that screenshot, use that table, you made that a copy of it, and do the rest of your calculations for the columns. All right, now that you're back, you should have these as your answers. And hopefully you're noticing as I'm writing, I got the same answer for all of these. So what happened with row frequency was that all the answers matched up. Now with column frequencies, the answers are matching up. And what that shows you is this is happening because those were all originally proportional answers. And what that means is that, I'll give you an example of, I could have, say it would have been a poll of 2 out of 4 teachers like action movies and 3 out of 6 students like action movies. Well, 2 out of 4 or 2 over 4 and 3 over 6 are the same proportion. They're both equal to 0.50. So the numbers were different for how many people were asked, but the proportions were the same. So part B here says, what do you notice about the columns and the frequencies? Well, they're all the same, so that means that there is no association. There is no association. So I can't tell the difference based on this, meaning if I were to say 75% of students prefer this movie, which movie type is it? Well, you can't tell me if it's action or drama because it's all the same. Or if I were to say 25% of the teachers prefer this type of movie, again, you can't tell me which one it is because there's no difference, there's no association. So part C asks us, what would you conclude about association based on column frequencies? Well, what you should conclude is there's no association, there's no differences. I can't really tell much from this table here. So what you're going to do in this final example is you're going to use this information here, and you're actually going to fill out the table on the next page. In the prior example, they filled out the table, that original table, for you. This time, you're going to have to use this information to fill it out. So what I'll ask you to do is hit pause now, take a screenshot of this, or maybe take a screenshot of both this and the next page, and fill it in right over top of it and fill in the actual numbers. Do that now. Okay, now that you've done that, I'm going to go ahead and fill in this table, and this is what you should have gotten using the information given. 60 females prefer action movies, 100 males prefer action movies, and together a total of 160 people preferred action. And down the line. Okay, almost done. Now 240, this number here means that's the total number of females. 160 is the number of males. And this 400, what does that mean? Pause, think about it. Okay, now that you're back, 400 is the total people in here. Now, question 9 is specific. You got to be careful here. It says, what proportion of participants are female? So what that means is, out of all the people polled or asked, what proportion are female? Well, the frequency would be 240 total females divided by the 400 total people. And that would tell you that the frequency, once you put that in your calculator, is 0.60. Okay? Now 10 is just a hypothetical. It says, if there was no association between gender and movie preference, should you expect more females than males or fewer females than males to prefer action movies? Explain. So think about that for a moment. Hit pause if you need to. All right. What you're supposed to get from this is the proportions would be all the same if there was no association, but overall there would still be more females. But you wouldn't be able to tell which movie type females would prefer more. All right. For number 11, you were asked to make a row frequency. So think about rows again. I'll do the first one for you as an example, and then we'll go from there. So we'll do female action. All right. So what I need to do if I'm doing row frequency, I go back to this table. I see that there are 60 females that prefer action, and there's 240 total females. So I'm just using the female row. So 60 divided by 240 means 0.25. All right. So hit pause, do the rest of these on your own. Okay, now that you're back, these are the answers you should have gotten for the females. And then for the males, when I did male who like action, I would have done 160. Nope, take that back. I would have done 100 divided by 160. And that would get me 0.625. And then using the same equation, this would have been the rest of my row frequency. We weren't worried about the columns here, we were just worrying about the rows. So if I did it this way and looking at it, all I can look at is like breaking down what the females liked and breaking down what the males liked. I can't compare males and females together. Those numbers, we're not going by the columns. We are just looking at individual genders there. That's what the row frequency is for this one. What you will do is you will use that information, skip number 12, use that previous table and answer number 13, number 14, and number 15. You're going to use those answers and put that for your exit ticket. Use that for your exit ticket. I have also provided for you, and 14 got copied twice. You don't have to do it twice. I provided the problem sets and the problem set answers. The expectation now is that you do also, when you have a math day, you do the problem sets and check your answers to make sure you're understanding the information. And if something catches you off guard, doesn't make sense, email me, or we will talk about it also on a Friday conference call together, video chat during my office hours. Either way or both are fine by me. But you need to be doing the problem sets daily now. They're no longer this option of just using it to study for quizzes. So with that said, let me get back here. What I want to say is we're going to get through this together. Sorry if that seemed fast paced. I'll work on my pacing. I just don't want these videos to take too long. You can always rewatch them. You can email me with questions. Definitely go by when I say pause and work on it. Do that. It's going to help you out. It's going to ensure you're understanding the material. The goal is not to get through the material fast. It's to get through the material and understanding it. So I'll follow up when we're going to have quizzes and all that. Keep checking Google Classroom for all of my announcements. I would check it daily. Check all of your teachers, whichever one, whatever their form of communication is. Follow that. With your IXL minutes, make sure you're doing your 40 minutes a week and doing the topics I suggest. If you get through those topics before the 40 minutes is up, then pick a new topic to work on that you don't have a score by. That way you're proving that you understand it, you're getting those scores of 80% or higher, and you can move on to a new topic. The goal is to have all the highlighted topics with 80% or more, with at least 20 questions. So those would be good to go back and hit. Other than that, email me, let me know if you have any questions. I hope you guys are doing great. I miss you, and I'll see you next time.